Hi everyone, welcome back to Kubrick Corner with me, Sean Wilson. So today, a question. How often do you feel compelled to rewatch the latest movie releases? I'm not talking about the movies that you've got on DVD or on Netflix, whatever. I'm talking about movies that are actually currently theatrical releases that are out in the cinema. How many times would you go and see a movie that is currently on theatrical release? I ask this because I recently went to go and rewatch Blade Runner 2049. And this, I very occasionally I do feel compelled to go and rewatch movies, and very often it doesn't take up a massive amount of time. But clearly, in the case of Blade Runner, it's about 165 minutes long. So basically, I've invested 6 hours of my life in watching this one film. In this instance, that's not a bad thing because I think Blade Runner 2049 was an incredible experience on first viewing, and nearly a month after its release, it got even better on the second viewing. And that's what I want to talk about, the idea of when you rewatch a movie, do you get more out of it? Because I certainly got a lot more out of this the second time round. You can see my previous review of Blade Runner 2049 on this channel, so I'm not going to go and recap the plot or the particulars. I'm just going to talk in a very general sense about why this is a really, really astonishing movie. And it's capped off what was an incredible month for movies back in October. I mean, you had Thor Ragnarok, this, and Call Me By Your Name as well, which I've reviewed separately on this channel. Really, really impressive run of movies, and Blade Runner is clearly at the top of the tree, and it confirms Denis Villeneuve it's just is an extraordinary filmmaker. In my previous review, I talked about the world building of the movie, and clearly, the first time you see a movie like Blade Runner 2049, it washes over you. It's so extraordinarily immersive and physical, and if Roger Deakins doesn't get the cinematography Oscar for this next year, frankly there is no justice in the world. I mean, the only movie that I can really see rivaling it is maybe Christopher Nolan's Dunkirk, which was beautifully shot by Hoyt van Hoytema, albeit a very different sort of movie from this. But really, this is a movie that demands repeat viewing. It's not just it's almost I felt compelled to go and see it again because I felt there was more in the movie, and how delightful it was to see that I was actually rewarded for my effort going to see the movie again, particularly the supporting character this time round. So you have Mackenzie Davis as the replicant who at one point merges with the droid, the hologram, I should say, not droid, Joy, played by Ana de Armas, within Ryan Gosling's Kay's apartment. And that was the scene that stood out most the first time around. But this time around, there were lots of fleeting little moments, like, for example, when he is piecing together the clues about how to find Harrison Ford's Deckard, he is holding a photograph of a tree, and she looks at it. She comes up to him. This is Mackenzie Davis's first scene. And she says, "I've never seen a real tree before." And just that reinforces the general essence of this world in which everything is detached. Nothing feels real. No one can make a human connection. And this feeds into a lot of the other supporting performances as well, particularly, I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Sylvia Hooks, who plays Love, who is the militant, villainous android in the employ of the Neander Corporation, headed up by Jared Leto's Neander Wallace. She is the main antagonist in this, and a lot of dry humour actually resulted from her performance. Having watched it again, there's a brilliant sequence where she basically orchestrates a drone strike whilst having her nails done, and she plays it with this very, very offbeat, almost deadpan sensibility that is actually quite terrifying. And she does have a suitably robotic air to her character, and she's really, really good. And again, I think just the general nuances of the storyline by Hampton Fancher and Michael Green really stood out this time around. There's a line by Love when Kay turns up at the Neander Corporation in search of clues, and she goes, "Oh, another prodigal serial number returns." Lots of little asides like that, which are very easy to miss on first viewing because you're just, again, as I said, being engulfed by the visual impact of the movie. This is why the movie needs to be seen again. There is so much richness in it. There is so much going on. And also the brilliant way in which I was able to appreciate more the second time around, the way in the movie blindsides us into what was happening with Ryan Gosling's character. This is going to entail a spoiler, by the way, so if you've not seen Blade Runner 2049, do not advance any further than this. Consider this a warning. But the way that the movie blindsides us into thinking that Ryan Gosling's character could actually be the prodigal son, the first person born of a replicant, and the way that this then fuses with the destiny of the other replicants in the city, all of whom they also believed that they were also the prodigal children, only to find out that that wasn't actually the case. which reinforces the tragedy and the emotional poignancy of the storyline. I have to say, there's much more emotional poignancy, I would say, in this than in the first Blade Runner movie. I was much more invested in the characters in this, and there's that wonderful scene where towards the end, Gosling's character, up to a certain point, has believed that he has a very, very invested relationship in the hologram Joy that I mentioned earlier, only for she's basically obliterated by the character of Love, and then later on he is approached by a massive hologram of Joy, which just reinforces the fact that really their relationship wasn't built on anything real. She is just a product. There's a line that's traced all the way through the movie, which I picked up more in the second time round, which comes from the Neander Wallace Corporation. We hope you enjoyed our product, and that reinforces the tragedy of the situation, which is that Kay has basically been in love with a product. He hasn't been making a human connection. He thought he was, but he hasn't, and that leads him into the final act of redemption, which is to reunite Harrison Ford's Deckard with his daughter, who is the memory creator. And lots of these little nuances come out the second time around. And you know what? I don't think a second viewing is even enough. I think I'm going to have to go and watch it a third time. This is an extraordinarily rich movie that I think has a lot to say, without getting too soapboxy about it. It's got a lot to say, particularly on second viewing, about the world we live in now. It's got a lot to say about the ignorance towards climate change, as seen in the movie with the big seawall that keeps the rampaging ocean out. There's the very chilling sight of San Diego that's basically been turned into a massive scrapyard as the world has become more and more isolationist, and as Los Angeles has basically retreated in on itself. There's a whole other part of California that's basically been obliterated in this retreat, which has got a lot to say about certain isolationist, ignorant attitudes of the time in which we're living now. I think, without getting too overwrought or plaintive about it, the nuances of the story reveal themselves a lot more on the second viewing, and I think this is a movie for our time, and indeed for all time. It reaffirms Denis Villeneuve as an extraordinary filmmaker, and if you've only seen Blade Runner 2049 once, I would urge you to go back and see it again, because I think it really does demand it. I'm Sean Wilson. You've been watching Kubrick Corner Film Reviews. See you next time.